Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Crimson Misery podcast. My name is Will Rainbolt. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, consider rating the show 5 stars. If you are watching on YouTube, consider liking, subscribing, and commenting down below. You can also email the pod at crimsonmiserypod@gmail.com. Suggest to me whatever, like if you want me to break down a specific team, talk about a year that you really liked in college basketball, uh, break down a season of a player, request that to me, and I will certainly take a look at it and do my research and then talk about it on this podcast. You can do that if you so desire. So, with that being said, we have a lot to get to in today's episode. Even just today, there was so much basketball that happened. So I want to break that down. Um, that said, yesterday was Indiana versus Nebraska. I correctly predicted Nebraska would win that game. But even still, I didn't think they'd lose as much as by as much as they did. I mean, they lost I believe it was by 17 points. I think I predicted they'd lose, I think by like 10 or 11. So even by that, it was just like, oh my God, we're really doing this again, huh? Because it is really predictable with this team. On paper, they should be better than they are, and yet they can't beat Nebraska on the road. And Nebraska is not an easy out. And again, I predicted Nebraska would win this game, and they did. So that's it's just frustrating because I know this team on paper is better than their record, and um, really they should be playing a tougher schedule, but it would show who they really are, right? So there is that sort of double-edged sword. Um, and it leads to results like this when you have um, Mackenzie and Baco picking up two fouls within like 33 seconds of the game starting. That's how you know uh, you're that's how it's really be going throughout the entire game. And um, Brandon Godden was when he was calling the game, he was like, "Nothing's going right for Indiana," and yeah, he was right because Nebraska was absolutely dominating. Indiana, I will say, like, I give some credit because they did at least try back. Miles Rice had a really, really good game with 20 points, but when you're constantly playing nine and then you're defensively not doing as well as you should and then missing your open three pointers, you're in for a tough night. Indiana took a lot of three pointers in this game, and I disagree. I mean, there are some people that are like, well, you should be able to hit those shots. Yes, that is true. Um, but people are like, why'd they take so many three pointers? Um, and to me, it's like, well, shouldn't they be? That should be the entire purpose of what Indiana. This is how the roster is constructed now under Mike Woodson, and we've been getting after him for playing the two bigs and Malik Renew and Umar Ballo, and that's obviously led to the result, like them getting blown out by Louisville when they're not rebounding defensively like they should be, and obviously the Gonzaga game where they were run out of the gym the next day. Uh, Not Maui, Battle for Atlantis. Why did I think it was Maui? That was UConn's tournament to suck. Um, no, but Battle for Atlantis. Yeah, they were run out of the gym on back-to-back nights, and largely due to the lack of three-point shooting, the lack of attempts. This has been a constant theme under Archie Miller and now Mike Woodson. So, what I don't disagree with is the strategy behind shooting three pointers more often. I think they should. I think they are capable of hitting that shot and they should take it more, right? Obviously, it doesn't help that your best three-point shooter in Mackenzie Mbako uh, is plagued with foul trouble. He only gets 2 points. Can Carlisle only gets 2 points. Also plagued by foul trouble. And yeah, it's just it was not a fun game to watch. Bryce Williams absolutely tore up the Hoosiers defense for 30 points. He was outstanding all game long. And Andrew Morgan, Jawan Gary also had some fantastic games. Um, yeah, it was not a fun watch, and I tried to stick through it, but then Indiana ends up getting down by 11 when Jawan Gary hits a 3-pointer late in the second half, and at that point it's just like, well, it's gonna be one of those years because. And here's my entire deal with people who say Mike Woodson needs to go. And I used to be excited about Indiana basketball, but then Mike Woodson, as head coach, I'm just not excited about watching his teams. Buddy, that has been the last 7 years. Not even seven. It's damn near a decade now. Since Yogi Ferrell, his senior year when they went to the Sweet 16. That's the last time Indiana's been to the Sweet 16 on the men's side, and it's been going on since the last year of the Tom Crean era, and then through Archie Miller, and now through Mike Woodson. It's just been the same deal over and over again. Uh, this it's just not been a fun watch for most of those years. You have the final couple years of Trace Jackson Davis, but even those were cut short and also were well below expectations. And yeah, for this Indiana squad, it's always been um it's either been you have decent expectations and then they find a way to underachieve, and then you have years that they don't really uh have any expectations put on them, or they're picked to finish in the middle of the road, and that's exactly where they end up going. Um, on paper, they should always be better than they are, but I don't know if it's a personnel thing. I don't know if they're just getting the wrong shooters, um, or they just are not properly coached if their practices aren't going very well. I don't know. It's not just a Mike Woodson thing, though. It's been like that for the better part of 8 to 9 years now, since the last year of Tom Crean, where this has always been the case. And I would say I'm getting tired of it, but at this point, I'm used to it. This is what I'm used to Indiana basketball looking like, and I'm not sitting here with my podcast like some people are. I've gone out on a rant about that in my second bonus episode if you would like to check that out, but I'm not using this platform to spin a narrative that Mike Woodson needs to go or whatever, because I'm not in charge of that. Honestly, if Mike Woodson goes, then I'm just my default answer is going to be the next coach is going to also have these problems and they're just going to last, you know? With the age of NIL and the transfer portal being reworked, you would think that a team and a school like Indiana would be much better at turning the ship around much more quickly. And because you're seeing that with other teams, right? A team like Kentucky, which I'll get to later in this episode, their game against Louisville. Mark Pope in his first year turned this entire Kentucky team from the destruction that John Calipari left after the upset to Oakland, where everyone just left, understandably, after that. And Mark Pope had to build an entirely new roster. And he has a top 5 basketball team. Kentucky has a top five basketball team, and that's not just with their ranking. They actually, at least offensively, because defensively there's still some questions, but um, that's and also just Mark Pope. It seems like a he's much more likable than John Calipari ever was at Kentucky. But um, you have a team like Missouri, who Dennis Gates on the hot seat, but then immediately goes into the transfer portal and ends up having last week. He knocks off number one Kansas with this team. You have Memphis, who I'll get to also later. They've yeah, they've had a hiccup with the Arkansas State loss, which was very surprising. But then but overall, they look like a pretty competent team after losing a lot of senior leaders from last year's team. They reload with Tyrese Hunter, Dane Danger, Colby Rogers. They have players that they are winning with. They have beaten some pretty good teams now. And I just don't understand why that can't be the case for Indiana. I'm I'm kind of at a loss for words with this team. Um I don't want to automatically throw in the towel, but it's really difficult when you're losing 85 to 68 against Nebraska, a team that you've lost four in a row to. I don't know what the answer is, honestly, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And it has been for 9 seasons now in a row that this has been the case. It's the same shit every single year. I, I'm not, I'm not sure what to even say at this point, but it is just, yeah. I don't, I wish I had more to say on it, but honestly, I don't. I I don't want to be like again, I don't want to be like another certain podcast that has been touting they're getting insider information from former players and having them on discussing Mike Woodson is the Antichrist and all that. So I don't want to I don't want to be like that, and it's really difficult to. But just from an objective standpoint, even looking at it from an outsider's perspective, if this season goes the path that a lot of people are thinking it goes, then Mike Woodson, it's going to be tough for him to last past this season. So that's that's just the way it currently is standing right now, and that's how long the Archie Miller era lasted. Now, you can say obviously that Mike Woodson has made the tournament twice in his first 2 years, and but if he doesn't make the tournament this year, that'll make it two consecutive years. Even in those 2 years with Trace Jackson Davis, there were plenty of question marks with Mike Woodson and plenty of criticisms, some fair, some unfair. Um, but it's not looking great, and this recent loss has put an even more sour mood on a season that had actual expectations and yet is just like the teams from uh 20 the 22-23 year when Trace Jackson Davis had his final year. Yeah, now yeah, they rebounded, beating Purdue twice, and then unfortunately I'm not going to talk about that Miami game, but then the sophomore year of OG Anunoby in 2016, 2017. And then there was the Romeo Langford year when Juwan Morgan was a senior, and there were actual expectations there that they didn't even make the NCAA tournament. Um, yeah, I mean it's been like that for nearly a decade now, and I'm not saying the answer is I miss Tom Crean, because that last year with Tom Crean was absolutely horrible to witness. And obviously Archie Miller, great job. You're having success at Rhode Island, dude, but you absolutely sucked at Indiana. So it's kind of void in in remembering or putting a rose tinted glasses on when it comes to Archie Miller. So I yeah, I'm talking a lot about Indiana in this in the first part of this podcast, but I just really, for as an Indiana alum and a fan of this team for, oh man, nearly 15 years now. It's just, it sucks. The way this team has just continuously kicked their fans in the crotch and the stomach and the face is is more than a lot of people should take. Now, I'm grateful that Indiana has had some pretty solid years here and there because that's more than a lot of other teams can claim, obviously. But at the same time, this for a quote unquote blue blood program, that's just not who Indiana is anymore. And if you disagree with that, then look around at the other blue blood programs and tell me if Indiana's success has been anywhere near that. Even the new power blue bloods like Houston or gosh, even Gonzaga, you take a look at what they're doing and it's not even comparable. Like I'm sorry, Indiana just is not on that level anymore. And it sucks. It really sucks. Um so I'm sorry to be all like doomy and depressed, but it's just like what can you even say anymore about the Indiana Hoosiers? So at least on the men's side, women's side not also not having a great year, but Terry Morin has had actual success, and I'm still like if you were to ask me who I'm more faithful in, the women's team or the men's team, it'd be the women's team without a doubt. Even not even like just talking about this year, but in like the next 2 to 3 years, gosh, I trust Terry Moore a lot more than I trust Mike Woodson. Now I trust Mike Woodson more than I did do with Archie Miller, obviously. So there's that. And if we're talking Tom Crean and Mike Woodson, I'd say about equal. Maybe give the edge to Tom Crean because he at least made three Sweet 16s when he was at Indiana, won two Big Ten regular season titles. But who knows if he would have had NIL and the transfer portal obviously being reworked. I'm not sure how he would have gone uh, through with that. But obviously, for two of those Sweet 16s, he had Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller. So who knows? Who knows? All right, enough about my little basketball team, my alma mater. Let's get into today's action. So today is Sunday. I'm recording this later in the night. So this episode will either be out uh, near midnight or this 15th, which was Sunday. Let's start off. I guess, do I want to do chronologically? Sure. Um, Auburn crushed Ohio State in Atlanta. This was not even close. This was never really a game. It was just a beatdown that Auburn gave number two in the country. Still probably going to be. I can see an argument for Auburn being number one, but number one has also not lost yet. So by default, my personal opinion should be if number one has not lost, they should stay at number one. And Ohio State just was absolutely manhandled. Uh, Jani Broom, 21 points, 20 rebounds. That's that's pretty crazy. He had just an excellent game. Three other Auburn players in double figures, and then Ohio State just really never got going. Uh, it was a 49-21 lead for Auburn at halftime, and it never got any better. So that's just kind of a game that happened, and not much more else to say. Auburn's very good, very much a Final Four candidate in the early going, even though it is just December. And Ohio State maybe not as good as I thought they were going to be. So I sorry Buckeyes. At least on the basketball side. On the football side, yeah, I hope you all lose to Tennessee. So that's all I got to say there. Um, yeah, you have Memphis defeating Clemson. That was that was especially after losing Memphis losing to Arkansas State at home and then Clemson beating Kentucky. I thought Clemson could definitely win this game at home, but got to give Memphis a lot of credit. They're a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde this season, but in terms of the solid play that their transfers have done for them, especially um, Tyrese Hunter, Colby Rogers, PJ Haggerty, even though he didn't have a great game, Tyrese Hunter especially. And Colby Rogers combined for 11 of the 12 threes that Memphis ended up hitting. So they end up winning in overtime. Clemson looked like they had this game in because they were up by 6 with about 2 minutes to go, but Memphis ends up coming from behind, and then and then they tie the game in regulation, and then they end up winning in overtime. And yeah, Memphis, great win on the road against a ranked team. Penny Hardaway needed a win like this. I wasn't sure he was going to get it, but he did. He did. We'll see if this carries over into the AAC into conference play for Memphis. But as of right now, good job. Good job, Memphis. Um, Cincinnati defeated Xavier in the crosstown shootout. I believe that's what it's called. Because obviously, Cincinnati oriented programs. Uh, not much to really say about this one. It was just a really close game overall. Zach Fremantle led Xavier with 18 points. Um, I still think both of these teams could definitely make the tournament. Cincinnati 8-1, Xavier 8-3. So, and then 4 Cincinnati players were in double figures. So, yeah, I not really much else to comment. Wisconsin defeated Butler. Butler just not a good basketball team. Like I'm sorry to any Butler fans listening. Wisconsin snapped their losing streak. Uh, all 5 starters were in double figures for Wisconsin, and so good job, Greg Gard. So, and let's see, Florida defeated Arizona State. Not much of a surprise. I just kind of don't want to talk about Florida, especially when we don't know the status of the Todd Golden uh, accusations. So, don't really want to talk about that program right now. Kansas rebounded after their tough week. They defeated NC State at home. Hunter Dickinson picked up a flagrant one. So if you're wondering how he's doing, you'll just need to you'll just need to uh, go by that. So then, I mean, Zeke Mayo had a great game, 26 points. Hunter Dickinson had 21 and 14, so he did have a bounce back game as well. But he's a villain. Hunter Dickinson is a villain. Kansas are villains. So congratulations, Kansas. You beat a mediocre NC State team. Congratulations. Um, this was a bit of a surprise. Texas A&M defeats Purdue in Indianapolis and Gainbridge Fieldhouse. This game was surprisingly dominated by Texas A&M throughout the game. Purdue tried to make a little comeback late, but then Texas A&M was just able to hit enough free throws to win the game. Uh, the SEC is just so much better than the Big Ten. They're just better than any conference. The Big Ten really is not that good of a conference this year. Um, whoever thought the Big Ten was going to be good, what were you thinking? I'm just saying. Uh, but no, that is disappointing for Purdue to not win a game, especially when the Big Ten is in need of a win like this. Especially when you're ranked higher than your opponent in Texas A&M. Uh, Braden Smith had a very tough second half. He had a really good first half, but then just kind of fell apart. He had six turnovers to go along with his six assists. He rolled his ankle in the second half, so he was just kind of having a rough time out there. Trey Kaufman Wren was kind of invisible until late in the game. By then, it was kind of late for that. And then A&M Pharrell Payne had a fantastic game with 16 points, and then Wade Taylor has just been all reliable for Texas A&M. He had 15 points. Jerick Phillips had 16 as well. So just a balanced attack, and their defense was just suffocating. And that's what Buzz Williams has always been known for when he was at Marquette and then at Virginia Tech, and now at A&M. That's just who his identity currently is. And good job on Texas A&M getting this win for the SEC. Another one goes the SEC's way. In that similar vein, like Alabama defeated Creighton, and I mean that wasn't really too much of a surprise. I thought uh, Alabama could fall if Creighton had enough firepower, but they did not. Um, Alabama just they're just so good uh, at home. So it was going to be a tough game, but Mark Sears had a fantastic game with 27 points. Ryan Kalkbrenner at 18, Stephen Ashworth with 20 for Creighton, but it just was not enough. And Creighton has definitely had an up and down year, especially after the win against Kansas. I thought there was a chance that they could come out on top, but again, Alabama just played better. Oklahoma defeated Oklahoma State. Not much of a surprise. Oklahoma's just a better team. Um, let's see here. UCLA, I'm pretty sure, just dealt a death blow to Arizona's season. I mean, can we just talk about the regression of Caleb Love? Because God, when he was at North Carolina, it was like he and RJ Davis and Armando Bacot were like a three-headed monster. And even in his first year Arizona, he was the Pac-12 player of the year. And this year he's just invisible. Like, are we sure Caleb Love is on this Arizona team? Because it doesn't look like it. They lose 57-54 at home against UCLA, and man, a good win for the Big Ten. UCLA picks up a big win, so there is that. But at the same time, Arizona 4-5. Wow. And UCLA picked up a big win against Oregon on the road. So UCLA is actually looking to have a pretty good year. So, and then speaking of the Big Ten, Rutgers defeated Seton Hall at home. Dylan Harper with the game-winning three. Knew that was going to happen just because of his brother Ron Harper Jr. hitting a half-court shot against Purdue that one year when Purdue was number one. And yeah, I just knew that was going to happen. But lose this game if you're Rutgers, who's already had a difficult year to start off with four losses. Lose this game to Seton Hall, and that's a bad loss. That is a really bad loss. So Rutgers got pretty lucky that Dylan Harper bailed them out. So Seton Hall led for a lot of that game. It still doesn't look good for Rutgers, but they didn't lose. They did not lose. So it's not a bad loss. But at the same time, lose that game also, and you have five losses this early on, and it's that's smelly. That's it stinks. So Rutgers may not be as good as a lot of preseason expectations had on them. So yeah, definitely. definitely a bit strange. So then you have Dayton upsetting Marquette, which Dayton has played a pretty good schedule, especially with them going down into Maui, playing North Carolina really well, and also beating UConn. Now they have a win over Marquette, so that's two Big East teams that they've beaten. Zed Key had 15, Javon Bennett 15, Enoch Cheeks had 14, Nate Santos had 12. So that's four Dayton starters in double figures, and Malachi Smith, their point guard, had 11 assists. So he was dishing them out. And Marquette had some pretty good games from Cam Jones and Chase Ross, 18 and 19 respectively, but no one else really did all that much. So Marquette was kind of doomed by that. I still think Marquette's going to be a really good team, but they are now 1-2 on the road. Uh, yeah, I was gonna say it hasn't been a great day for the Big East, but UConn did end up pulling away from Gonzaga here late. That was the last game that I watched. Cleef Battle at 21 for Gonzaga, Ryan Nimhard at 16, Michael Ajayi had 14, but UConn had a really great game from Liam McNeely. Their all everything freshman with 26. He had the best game by far in this one, man. And God, we got to talk about Aiden Mahaney because he looked bad. I mean, St. Mary's transfer, a quote unquote can't miss transfer portal edition. He's not been good. He has not been good on this Yukon team. He looked bad in the Maui Invitational, and he's looked bad since then. He only played 8 minutes, had 2 points, had a crazy backcourt 10-second violation where he was too slow to get the ball up. And man, it just hasn't been good for him. And then there was a really funny photo. It was captured by No Context College Basketball where Dan Hurley has his arm around a referee and they're both like smiling. It's like they're looking at the sunset. Uh, it's just a really funny image. I'm not going to say anything more about that. Um, Let's see here. I mean, Louisville and Kentucky. Louisville put up a pretty good fight in Rupp Arena for as long as they could, but Kentucky just too talented offensively. Lamont Butler had a career game. He went a perfect 6 of 6 from three. He went 10 for 10 from the floor. Overall, he only went 7 out of 12 from the free throw line, though. So, Lamont, come on, clean that up, man. So, no, but 33 points, that is incredible. And he's missed the last two games. So the fact that he came out and had this great game against Kentucky's arch rival in Louisville, I mean, great performance. And then also Jackson Robinson had some clutch baskets. Otega Owe had 17 points. Andrew Carr had some big plays, especially rebounding wise. He was really clutch down the stretch. Um, Kobe Bria also, I mean, he didn't have as great of a shooting night as he usually does, but still finished with 10. So again, Kentucky needed all those 10 points. So uh, but then Chucky Hepburn, 26, Terrence Edwards Jr. with 23 for Louisville. Those two like kept Louisville in the game, especially when a lot of Pat Kelsey's players were hurt, and so Louisville was definitely undermanned in this one. But at the same time, they played pretty well overall. 6-5 though on the year. Again, Indiana should have had that game. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about Indiana. Um, but then game of the day right here, Tennessee going on the road against Illinois as a number one team in the country. Tennessee going into a hostile environment at Illinois at the State Farm Center. They somehow uh, whether the storm of the crowd, the referees calling literally every single foul on both teams, they were just the refs were so bad in this game, and they just did not know how to not call a foul, even if it was the most ticky tack thing possible. Um, and then a poor shooting night from the floor, especially from Chaz Lanier, who went 5 of 17 from the floor. Igor Milicic went 0 for 8 from three. But Tennessee still won 66 to 64. And big reason why Jordan Gainey was clutch in this one. 23 points, 3 of 6 from three, had a big three to tie the game. And then, but I got to say, Igor Milicic, despite not playing very well, he still had the bucket that put Tennessee on top for good. And yeah, Tennessee beats Illinois. Oh yeah, no, it was no, Gainey scored at the buzzer. Yeah, that's right. Gainey had the game-winning. I okay, that's where I got it wrong. Milicic had the go-ahead bucket to start, and then Illinois hit one of, or no, did yeah, Illinois made free throws to tie the game again, and then Jordan Gainey ended up winning the game at the buzzer, and yeah, getting a win like this on the road is very good for Tennessee. Um, Kasparis Yakuchonis had 22. Trey White had 11. Kylan Boswell had 10. Yeah, Ben Humrickhouse definitely did not play very well, but also had like one of the best dunks I've ever seen, where he just like flew through the air. I think that was his first dunk of the year. Uh, excuse me. And yeah, I thought that was when Illinois was going to like take over, but then the saying goes, like, championship teams win on nights when they're not supposed to. And Tennessee definitely, they did that. They won on the road. Um so Illinois has not defeated a number one team now since they defeated Indiana. Shit, I didn't want to mention Indiana. Um but no, they defeated Indiana in 2013 when Tyler Griffey got free from Cody Zeller and knocked in the game-winning shot to win 74 to 72. I watched that game live. My 11-year-old heart was crushed that day. Um, but no, but Tennessee, they earned this one, and they're still going to be number one. I mean, Auburn makes a pretty good case, but as long as Tennessee does not lose, they should still remain at number one. So that's my 2 cents on that. And yeah, even though like Sakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier both fouled out too, that's that's impressive that they were still able to win this game. And it tells you a lot about how deep this Tennessee team is and how consistent they are, and really just how well Rick Barnes coaches them. Because even though Rick Barnes overall has a reputation as a choker, or he hasn't gotten to the like uh, to the Final Four yet. I mean, it's yeah, you can say that about Rick Barnes, but at the same time, or no, he has made a Final Four, right? He has. Am I mistaking him with someone else? Because he has gotten to the Final Four. Surely he has. Yes, he has. It was back in 2000 Final Four. So he has been to a Final Four, just not since 2003. So in 20 years, he hasn't been to the Final Four. So there is a drought still there. So I am right. Um, but yeah, Rick Barnes still is a legitimate Hall of Fame coach still, like just for the body of work he's done overall. Still think he may need to get to another Final Four, and I think this team definitely can. But at the same time, we'll see. We shall see. It is still a long ways away, but Tennessee is a perfect 10-0 so far, and that's that's pretty good. I still that is really good. And speaking of Tennessee hoops, even though the women's team played one of the worst teams in Division, that would be, who did they play? They played uh, North Carolina Central. They won 139 to 50 and hit 33 pointers, which is a Division 1 record either on the men's or women's side. I don't care who that's against. That's like incredible. Um, Even like North Dakota State when they played Oak Hills Christian College and at won by like 100 points. They didn't hit that many threes. So, but Tennessee women's did. Um, God, that is insane. Again, I know it's against a bad basketball team, but at the same time, Kim Caldwell in her first year has Tennessee with the Lady Volunteers playing pretty well. So, um, yeah, overall, uh, on the men's side, the Big Ten's just not very good. Especially this week, it was not a great week to be a Big Ten fan. The Big East had a bit of a rough stretch. Big 12 had some pretty good wins, especially Kansas getting back on track. Even though a team like Arizona has definitely, they probably would have hoped for a better start from them, but um, that is not to be. Cincinnati beating Xavier definitely helped. Iowa State at number three in the country. The ACC, trash. God, the ACC sucks. Like that's gonna be Duke's to lose at this point. Um, because God, this conference is just a clusterfuck of terrible teams. You had Syracuse losing to Georgetown, and Miami sucks. North Carolina's 6-4, Virginia's 6-4 in their first year post Tony Bennett. NC State just lost. God, this conference is a wasteland. Uh, yeah, the ACC is not good. This not good, not good. The Atlantic 10, I mean, Dayton picked up a gigantic win, and you have a lot of good teams with some good records. I mean, Davidson's 8-2, VCU's 9-2, George Washington is 9-2, Dayton's 9-2, Rhode Island's 9-1. I just mentioned them. St. Bonaventure's 10-1. Loyola is 8-0. So the Atlantic 10's got some pretty good teams, folks. So keep an eye out on the Atlantic 10. You have the AAC with Memphis and Wichita State. Onto Wichita State just got demolished though. So yeah, not really fun for Wichita State right now. They just lost at DePaul. DePaul very sneaky. I hope success for DePaul, especially under Chris Holtman, and they have CJ Gunn, former Indiana player, on that team. So yeah, I hope the best for them. Seriously, another team I gotta shout out, even though they lost their first game, UC Irvine. Uh, they lost to Oregon, so I do kind of hope that some team like has a pretty big undefeated stretch. That could be Loyola this year. Not gonna lie, uh, could be. We'll see. Could be Drake as well in the Missouri Valley. They're 9-0. Utah State 10-0. Columbia, I mean, Columbia is also. Oh no, they're not undefeated anymore. They did lose their first game. Well, that entire bit went out the window. um, yeah, and then the best conference in basketball, men's basketball, is the SEC by far. They have three undefeated teams. They have one, two, three, four teams in the no, five teams in the top 10. Alabama's a little bit of the ways down because they've lost a couple of games, but on the whole, the worst team by record is South Carolina, and the record's 7-3. So yeah, the SEC is the best conference in all of men's college basketball. Furman at 10-1. Just going by conference, like shouting out some teams that have played really well so far. You have the usual like North Dakota State. I already mentioned them, 9-4. Arkansas State, even though I mean they're 8-3 and they have a win over Memphis. So I'm just saying. St. Mary's at 9-1, Gonzaga at 7-3, Oregon State 7-2, San Francisco 8-2, Washington State 9-2 in the West Coast Conference. Uh, and that's about it in terms of like any potential like mid-major teams. Also Sanford, I got to shout out Sanford. Made the tournament last year. They're 9-2 this year. So who knows? It could be a for the Southern Conference. It could be a battle for the top with Furman and Sanford. So anywho, um, yeah, I'm still just in awe of the SEC. Even the teams that aren't ranked, like Missouri and Vanderbilt and Georgia, they're all 9-1. It's like, dude. And then Arkansas's 9-2, LSU's 8-2, Texas is 8-2. What the hell? What a stacked conference. Like, this is what the SEC football fans think that the SEC conference is in football, and they're gravely mistaken because all that energy has been Harvard to men's basketball. So, just saying. Speaking of which, we did have the Heisman uh, winner reveal. That would be Mr. Travis Hunter. Deserves it. I don't think you. I mean, either way, if you went with Ashton Genty or Travis Hunter, that's a really tough call. But at the same time, I think Travis Hunter definitely deserves it. I think Ashton Genty also, you could make a really, really, really good case for him. So yeah, I mean, this is I just gotta also point out there were two voters who voted for Curtis as the as the winner. He got two first place votes. Curtis Rourke did, quarterback for Indiana. So whoever you are, Godspeed and uh, yeah, thumbs up to those people. All right. With that said, I do have to take care of some stuff. So um, thank you all for listening. Uh, I hope you enjoyed my little rant about Indiana men's basketball. I guess I wait until the women's team plays, and then obviously December 20th, less than a week from now, we got Indiana Notre Dame to open the college football playoff. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening there. But until then, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night or day or whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully, I'll get a few more episodes in next week. So, with that being said, thanks again for listening, and I hope you all take care wherever you are. And yeah, tell people about the pod if you want to spread the word about it. Again, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, rate the show 5 stars. And yeah, with that being said, thanks again, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.